Welcome back to the Deep Dive, the official audio extension of the UFO Forums. It is January 26, 2026, and we are broadcasting exactly 30 years, almost to the week past, one of the most contentious, biologically disturbing, and frankly terrifying events in the history of high strangeness. We are opening the files on the Varginha incident in Brazil.
Varginha. It's a name that really acts as a shibboleth in this community. For anyone just getting into this, it's often dismissed as, folklore, or they call it the Roswell of Brazil. But for those who've actually tracked the data, especially with what's come out in just the last few days from Washington, D.C., that comparison, it feels woefully inadequate.
Inadequate is the word. Roswell was wreckage.
Exactly.
It was debris fields and memory metal. Varginha was biological. It was visceral.
It was alive.
And that, right there, is the hook for today's deep dive. We are not just retelling old campfire stories about three girls seeing a monster in a vacant lot. We are looking at this because just a few days ago, on January 20th, 2026, filmmaker James Fox held a press conference right at the National Press Club. And it fundamentally changed the entire landscape of this case. We were talking about new witnesses breaking 30 years of silence, blocked visas from the U.S. State Department, and a confession from a lead neurosurgeon that is probably going to keep you up at night.
Oh, it definitely kept me up last night just reviewing the transcripts. The implication of what was said in D.C. this week is that the cover-up is in history. It's not a cold case, it's active policy right now.
So our mission today is to sift through all that noise. We're going to strip away the pop culture tropes. If you're tuning in from the UFO Forums community, you already know the drill. We are not here for little green men. We're treating this as a forensic investigation, an investigation into a military crash retrieval, a confirmed biological hazard event, and a diplomatic containment strategy that spans two continents.
Right. And the central tension we need to explore here isn't, did something happen? The evidence for something happening is just overwhelming. The real tension is the clash between the official narrative, which, believe it or not, involves mentally ill homeless men and expectant dwarf couples.
Which we will get into. It's something.
It really is. It's the clash between that and the specific corroborated medical testimony regarding lethal bacteria and, well, telepathic contact.
So let's unpack this. We have to build the timeline carefully because Varginha wasn't just a single moment. It was a sequence of events. And it didn't start in the city, did it? It started up in the sky. Let's go back to January 1996.
To understand the gravity of Varginha, you have to realize this was a multi-stage event. It wasn't a fleeting light in the sky. It was, for all intents and purposes, a slow-motion car crash involving some kind of advanced technology. And the first major witness wasn't a teenager. He was a pilot. Carlos D'Souza.
Right, January 13th, 1996. This is what researchers call the precursor event. Set the scene for us.
Okay, so Carlos D'Souza is an experienced pilot. He's flying an ultralight aircraft. Now, usually when we hear about UAP sightings, we hear about the 5 observables, instant acceleration, hypersonic velocity, no visible means of propulsion. We think of technology that's just invincible.
Untouchable.
Exactly. But D'Souza sees something very different. He sees a cigar-shaped craft, roughly the size of a school bus, and it is in serious trouble.
It's losing altitude.
It's losing altitude, it's vibrating erratically, and it's emitting smoke. And the detail that, for me, lends this so much credibility, the forensic detail, is that he describes a jagged gash, a hole, right in the front of the fuselage.
That's such a crucial distinction. We must never hear about these things being damaged.
Never. This wasn't some pristine vessel performing a show of force for a carrier group. This was a wreck in progress. It was bleeding altitude. So D'Souza does what any pilot would do. He tracks it. He follows the trajectory about 10 miles out of town, and he watches it go down in a farm field. He lands his ultralight nearby and starts hiking toward the crash site.
He must be thinking he's about to rescue survivors from a conventional plane crash.
He expects to be the first responder, a hero, maybe. But when he crests the ridge, he finds the Brazilian military is already there. And this, right here, is the smoking gun for the whole timeline. They weren't just arriving, they were established. They had trucks, they had a perimeter set up, recovery vehicles.
And the direction they came from is important, right? I remember reading that.
It's the key detail. D'Souza noted that the military convoy arrived from the opposite direction of the crash trajectory. They weren't chasing it from behind. They were waiting for it at the termination point.
That implies sophisticated tracking. That's not just local air traffic control.
It implies they knew exactly where it was going to hit before it even hit. And we know from later leaks and sources that NORAD, the North American Aerospace Defense Command, was tracking this object as it entered the atmosphere. We'll get into the U.S. involvement later, but this proves that on January 13th, the retrieval operations were already underway before the thing had even stopped moving.
And the Sousa's welcome was, well, it was less than warm.
He was threatened with rifles immediately. He was told to leave, to forget what he saw, and that if he ever spoke about it, the consequences would be severe. He saw debris scattered across the field, strange metallic wreckage. But at this specific site, on the 13th, he didn't report seeing any bodies. This was likely the primary impact site, the place where the main hardware was recovered.
Okay, so hardware comes down on the 13th. The military thinks they have it all contained, but clearly something survived. Or maybe there was a second craft. Because you fast forward just 7 days to January 20th, 1996, and the chaos shifts from a rural field to the dense urban environment of Varginha itself.
And this is the primary incident. This is the one that put Varginha on the map for good. And it centers on 3 young women, Liliane, Valkyria, and Katya. Their ages range from 14 to 22.
And these aren't ufologists. They're not looking for fame or trying to start a YouTube channel. They're just kids taking a shortcut home, right through a vacant lot known as Yardima Underi.
And it's 3:30 p.m., broad daylight. I want to stress that for you listening. This is not a lights in the sky at midnight story where shadows play tricks on your eyes. The sun is up, visibility is perfect. They are walking near this old cinder block wall, and they see something crouching in the weeds.
And their reaction is so visceral, they don't scream alien or UFO, they scream devil.
That's the cultural filter at work, isn't it? They're raised in a Catholic environment in Brazil. When they see a creature that is so visually disturbing, so completely outside of the natural order, their minds snap to theology, not science fiction. They genuinely think they are looking at a demon.
Oh, let's break down the description, though, because despite that demon interpretation, the physical details they provided were incredibly specific, and they've remained consistent for 30 years under intense pressure.
Consistency is key in witness testimony, and theirs never wavered. They described a creature that was small, maybe 3 to 4 feet tall. It was crouching. The skin was the first thing they noticed. It wasn't the gray skin of pop culture. It was dark brown, and it was oily. Greasy.
That oily texture, that's a detail you can't really just make up on the spot. It's so biological, so specific.
It suggests a biological function, right? Maybe a protective coating against our atmosphere. Maybe it's sweat from stress or injury. And then there's the head. It was large, with 3 distinct ridges running along the cranium. The girls called them horns in the panic of the moment, which, fed into the devil narrative. But in later sketches, they look very clearly like cranial ridges, protuberances.
And the eyes.
Large red eyes, not glowing like LEDs on a machine, but large, bulbous, organic, and red. And the creature appeared terrified. It wasn't aggressive. It wasn't attacking. It was huddled against the wall, shivering. It looked like a cornered animal.
And then there is the smell. I have to talk about the smell, because this becomes a major forensic thread later on.
Ammonia. The girls mentioned this strange, pungent odor in the air. Later at the hospital, doctors and nurses mentioned an overwhelming stench of ammonia and sulfur. At the capture site, military personnel noted it. This isn't a visual hallucination. Hallucinations happen in the brain. They don't produce a physical scent that fills a room and makes people gag.
So the girls run. They are screaming. They run home to their mother. The mother, to her credit, she actually goes back to the site almost immediately.
She does, and by the time she gets there, the creature is gone. But the physical evidence remains. She sees the matted grass where it was crouching, and she smells that lingering ammonia scent. And this just kicks off a chain reaction in the town, because while the girls were running, the military police, specifically their P2 intelligence unit, were already closing in.
And this brings us to section 2, the capture and the tragedy. Because while the girls saw the creature and fled, the military had a job to do. They had to catch it. And this is where the story shifts from a sighting to a full-blown medical emergency.
We have to talk about Officer Marco Eli Cheriz.
Marco Cheriz. In the lore of Varginha, he is the martyr of the story.
He is. He was a young military police officer, just 23 years old. By all accounts, he was fit, healthy, totally dedicated. He was part of the capture team. On that day, January 20th, during a sweep of the area, he was directly involved in the physical capture of one of these beings.
The narrative is that he physically handled the creature without proper protection.
That's the testimony. He grabbed it to get it into the transport vehicle. Now you have to consider the context. It's 1996. He's essentially a beat cop. He's not wearing a level 4 hazmat suit. He's in his standard uniform. He likely had basic gloves, maybe cotton or leather, but certainly nothing rated for a biohazard.
And during this struggle, or maybe just during the transport, he makes some kind of skin-to-skin contact.
He sustains a minor injury, a scratch or an abrasion, sources say, likely on his arm or near his armpit. At the moment, it probably seemed like nothing. You know, a scrape you get from a terrified animal.
But this is where the biological contact aspect becomes utterly terrifying. Because Marco Cherez didn't just go home and wash it off with soap and water.
No. Within just a few days, he fell violently ill. He developed a small abscess or a cyst right under his armpit, directly related to the point of contact. He goes in for what should be a minor surgery to remove it, a totally routine procedure.
Oh, it wasn't routine.
The infection went systemic almost immediately. He developed sepsis. For the listeners who might not know, sepsis is the body's extreme, over-the-top response to an infection. It triggers a chain reaction that damages its own tissues and organs. It's a complete cascade failure.
And he died. A healthy 23-year-old man, dead within weeks, February 15th, 1996.
But the death itself, as tragic as it is, isn't the smoking gun. People die of sepsis. The smoking gun is the pathology report. And thanks to the relentless work of researchers like James Fox and the Brazilian ufologists who just refused to let this go, we have incredible insight into what the doctors found.
This is the part of the story that just gives me chills. The bacteria.
They identified the bacteria as Staphylococcus schleiferi.
Okay, let's unpack that.
Yeah.
What is Staphylococcus schleiferi? I've never heard of it.
And you shouldn't have. It is a bacterium that is commonly found in dogs and cats. It causes ear infections in poodles, things like that. It is extremely rare in humans. And when it does appear in humans, it is usually in severely immunocompromised people, patients with HIV, late-stage cancer, or transplant recipients with suppressed immune systems.
But Cherez was healthy. He was a fit, young police officer.
He was perfectly healthy. They tested him for everything. HIV, hepatitis, diabetes, you name it. His immune system was fully functional. And yet, this bacteria it ravaged him.
And the pathologist, Dr. Joan Giannini, he noted something strange about the behavior of the bacteria itself, right?
He did. He stated that this specific sample of Staphylococcus schleiferi acted anomalously. It was incredibly aggressive, virulent, and critically, it was completely resistant to antibiotics, all of them. It didn't behave like the standard bacteria you'd find in a household pet. It behaved like something that had been weaponized or something that was just supercharged.
Dr. Giannini used an analogy that really sticks with me. He compared it to a Komodo dragon.
The Komodo dragon analogy is brilliant and terrifying. Think about how a Komodo dragon hunts. It doesn't rely solely on bite force. It bites its prey, and its saliva is teeming with this toxic cocktail of bacteria that the wound inevitably becomes septic. The prey wanders off and just dies slowly of infection. Giannini was suggesting that the creature Cherez handled might have had a similar defense mechanism.
A biological defense system.
Exactly. We always imagine aliens with ray guns or force fields. But what if you're a biological entity crashing on a hostile planet? Maybe your primary defense is your microbiome. Maybe your skin is coated in pathogens that are just compatible enough with Earth biology to infect us, but so foreign that our immune systems have absolutely no idea how to fight them.
It effectively bypassed his entire immune response. It was like an alien key fitting perfectly into a human lock he didn't even know he had.
It was, and that raises the question, was this accidental? Was it just space germs? Or is the Komodo dragon analogy more accurate? Was this a biological failsafe? If you touch me, you die.
And bringing it back to the smell for a second, the ammonia.
Ammonia is a toxic compound. If a creature is exuding ammonia through its pores, it is already creating a hazardous environment for any carbon-based life form from Earth that gets too close. It's a walking biohazard.
So Cherez dies. The family is, of course, devastated, and the military clamps down. Hard. They refuse to release the autopsy initially. They forbid the family from having an open casket. They seal the coffin. It has all the classic hallmarks of a cover-up.
And not just a cover-up of a UFO sighting. It's a cover-up of a biological fatality. Think about the implications of that. If the public knew that physical contact with these things could cause a lethal antibiotic-resistant plague, that is panic. That is outbreak-level societal panic.
It completely recontextualizes the secrecy. It's not just, we don't want to tell you about the aliens. It's, We don't want to start a global panic about a space plague.
Precisely. It changes the dynamic from simple secrecy to active biological containment.
Which brings us to the present day,
Ah.
January 2026. Because for 30 years, we've had the girl's story, we've had the rumors about the hospital, the whispers about Cherise, but James Fox just dropped an absolute bombshell at the National Press Club. He introduced a new witness, a witness with, well, unimpeachable credibility.
Dr. Italo Venturelli.
This isn't a random bystander. This isn't some guy on the internet looking for 15 minutes of fame.
No. Dr. Venturelli is a lead neurosurgeon at the regional hospital in Varginha. He is described by everyone who knows him as a pillar of the community. He's an older gentleman now, very serious, very academic. He has absolutely nothing to gain by making this up. In fact, he risks his reputation, his legacy, his entire medical license.
And he stated, publicly, he is willing to take a lie detector test.
That's a bold statement. It shows he is supremely confident in what he saw. So let's look at his testimony. He claims he was at the hospital during this event in January 1996. And he describes a face-to-face encounter with one of these beings.
For 4 minutes.
4 minutes is a lifetime in a situation like that. Usually these sightings are just a split second. He stood there, in a room, staring at this thing.
And he confirms the physical description, doesn't he?
Mostly. He confirms the red eyes, he confirms the cranial ridges, he called them little horns, but he noted the skin was pale or white, which is slightly different from the girl's brown and oily description.
Could that be a difference in the individual being? Or maybe the creature's condition by that point?
It could be both. If the creature in the field was covered in oil or mud, or if it was sunburned from our atmosphere, or, more likely, if the creature at the hospital was dying. Pale skin is a classic sign of shock or massive blood loss. If this being was injured during the capture, it might have been exsanguinating.
But the physical description isn't even the most shocking part of Venturelli's testimony. It's the interaction.
The telepathy.
Yeah.
Dr. Venturelli says he didn't speak to it, and it didn't speak to him verbally, but he received a download. He describes a communication that was instantaneous and massive in scope. He said he felt a higher level of intelligence.
That phrase gives me pause. A neurosurgeon saying higher level of intelligence.
It completely disrupts the wild animal narrative we had before. The girls thought it was a scared animal or a demon. The military treated it like a prisoner of war. But the neurosurgeon, a man who literally studies brains for a living, looked into its eyes and felt an intellect that dwarfed his own.
He said it controlled the room.
Even injured, even captive, it had a presence. He compared the intensity of that presence to an angel or a demon, and I think that's just his attempt to articulate the feeling of encountering something truly other, something that doesn't fit into our biological hierarchy at all.
Profoundly non-human. And he kept this a secret for 30 years.
Fear. Career preservation. Can you imagine being a respected doctor in 1996 and telling your colleagues you just had a telepathic conversation with an alien in exam room 3? You'd be institutionalized. But why come forward now? I think we are seeing a major cultural shift. The stigma is finally breaking. And perhaps, looking back at his life, he realized this was the single most important thing that ever happened to him, and he just couldn't take that secret to the grave.
It really validates the whole mission of digging into these old cases, doesn't it? The data is there if you just wait for the people to feel safe enough to finally share it.
Absolutely. And his testimony, his confession, it stands in such stark, brutal contrast to the official explanations we've been fed for 3 decades.
Oh, we have to get into that. Section 4, the official narrative. Because you almost have to admire the sheer audacity of the Brazilian military's explanation. It is gaslighting 101.
So let's deconstruct the Mudinho theory.
Mudinho.
Right. So in 2010, the military finally releases the results of their inquiry. And they claimed that the 3 girls, in broad daylight, terrified out of their minds, didn't see an alien. They saw a local homeless man named Luiz Antonio Rapala, known locally as Mudinho.
Who was apparently covered in mud.
Covered in mud, crouching by a wall. Now, let's just apply some basic critical thinking here. The girls knew Mudinho. They lived in the same community. Varginha isn't New York City. It's a tight-knit place. They knew who the local characters were. They knew him by sight.
And I have to ask, did Mudinho have glowing red eyes? Did he have 3 cranial ridges? Did he smell so strongly of ammonia it made you dizzy?
No. And Mudinho, by all accounts, was a harmless gentleman. The reaction of the girls, which was pure primal terror, doesn't match seeing a local guy they've probably seen 100 times before. It's an insult to the witnesses' intelligence, frankly.
And it gets worse. The hospital explanation is even more ridiculous.
The dwarf couple.
I can't even say it with a straight face. It sounds like a bad joke from a 90s comedy.
The military claimed that the aliens that were seen being ushered into the hospital under sheets were actually a couple with dwarfism who were there for the delivery of a baby.
So let me get this straight. Doctors and nurses, trained medical observers, professionals who deal with human bodies every single day, mistook a pregnant woman with dwarfism for a brown-skinned, oily, red-eyed extraterrestrial monster.
It's absurd, but it acts as a litmus test. When the cover-up is that sloppy, it tells you two things. One, they're desperate. And two, they don't respect the public enough to even come up with a good lie. They just need a lie to put in the file to close the case.
It's the swamp gas of the 90s, the weather balloon defense.
Precisely. It's a placeholder explanation, and it completely ignores the other anomalies that don't fit the muddy man theory, like the zoo deaths.
Right, the zoo.
Yeah.
This is a detail that often gets overlooked in the broader story, but it's so strange.
Around the exact same time as these sightings, late January 1996, the local zoo in Varginha experienced this sudden wave of unexplained animal deaths. A tapir, an ocelot, 2 deer.
Animals that don't just drop dead all at once for no reason.
No. And the toxicology reports were, you guessed it, inconclusive, or they went missing. Now, if we go back to the bacteria theory, the Staphylococcus schleiferi, and we assume there was a creature wandering through the woods or prowling near the zoo before it was captured, did it contaminate the area?
Did it infect the other animals?
Or did it feed? Or was it simply its presence? If it emits a toxin, maybe just being in close proximity for too long is lethal to local fauna. It adds this whole other layer to the biological threat aspect of the incident.
It really paints a picture of a chaotic event. This wasn't a neat and tidy retrieval where they put the saucer in a truck and drove away quietly. The creature was loose, it was interacting with the environment, it was interacting with the locals, it was killing animals, possibly by infection, and the military was just scrambling to contain it.
And not just the Brazilian military. And this is where the geopolitics really comes into play, because, of course, the United States was involved.
We are always involved, aren't we?
Seems to be a recurring theme.
Section 5, the American connection. We mentioned NORAD earlier. They warned Brazil.
Right. NORAD tracks everything entering the atmosphere. It's their entire job. They likely saw this object coming down and designated it as unknown origin. They would have alerted the Brazilian authorities immediately. You have an incoming bogey. Here are the coordinates.
That explains how the Brazilian military trucks were able to get to the Carlos de Souza crash site so incredibly fast. They were reacting to U.S. intelligence. But the involvement goes much deeper than just a phone call. James Fox's sources, and these are credible military witnesses, not just rumors, claim that U.S. operatives were on the ground in Varginha almost immediately.
In civilian clothes? Likely NASA, USF, maybe CIA, or a specialized retrieval team like the 8-tip guys. The reports describe Americans arriving, renting vehicles, and essentially taking charge of the retrieval logistics.
There's a very specific claim about a smuggling operation, too.
Yes. The claim is that a U.S. operative flew into Brazil with a specific mission to retrieve a piece of the craft, or, more likely, the biological remains, and smuggle it back to the United States. This fits the historical pattern perfectly. We let our allies handle the perimeter, we let them handle the crowd control, but we take the prize. We take the technology, we take the bodies.
And they also handle the intimidation. The Silva family, the mother, and the girls, they were visited, weren't they?
Men in suits. It's a cliche because it's real. The mother described being visited by men who offered her a suitcase full of cash. One of them had a heavy accent, possibly American, and the deal was simple. Take the money, go on national television, and say you lied. Say it was a dog. Say it was Mudinho. Say anything.
And they refused.
They refused. You have to remember, they lived in poverty. That money could have changed their entire lives. But they had integrity. They refused to lie about what they saw, and that refusal has cost them. They've been mocked and ridiculed for 30 years.
But the intimidation isn't ancient history. This is what shocked me about the 2026 press conference.
Yeah.
The intimidation is happening now.
The visas.
James Fox tries to bring the key witnesses to Washington, D.C. for the 30th anniversary event. He wants them to tell their story to the world press at the National Press Club. He even has Congressman Eric Burleson helping him, a sitting U.S. congressman.
And the visas are all denied.
Every single one of them.
That is not a coincidence. That is a message. It is incredibly difficult to get a visa application denied when you have a U.S. congressman vouching for you. That tells me that the do not fly list for Virginia witnesses is still very much active in 2026. The U.S. State Department, or whoever pulls those strings from the shadows, does not want these people on American soil testifying under oath.
It implies the cover-up is still active policy. It's not a cold case at all. It's a hot file.
It is very much active. Think about it. If they were just crazy ladies telling stories about a homeless man, you'd let them come. Let them embarrass themselves on C-SPAN. But blocking them, that validates them. That says, we are afraid of what you have to say.
So we have the witnesses trapped in Brazil. We have the confession of the neurosurgeon. What about the physical evidence? Section 6.
We have to talk about Gary Nolan.
Stanford professor Gary Nolan. He's been doing the Lord's work on the material science side of this whole phenomenon.
He has. He's analyzed materials from various alleged crash retrievals. And while he hasn't publicly released a Varginha-specific report that says this is alien, his broader work provides the context we need. He looks at isotope ratios.
Can you explain that for the listener? Why do isotope ratios matter so much?
Sure. Everything on Earth is made of elements, magnesium, bismuth, and so on. When we mine these metals, they have a very specific, predictable ratio of isotopes. That ratio is consistent because of how our solar system formed and how we process ore. If you find a piece of magnesium where the isotope ratio is completely skewed, say the magnesium-25 isotope is 40% higher than it should be, that material wasn't made in a blast furnace on Earth. It was engineered at the atomic level.
And Nolan is finding materials like this.
He is. And he's also looked at the brains of people who have had close encounters with these things, the Havana syndrome connection. He's finding evidence of physical brain damage.
This links right back to Varginha and Dr. Venturelli's higher intelligence comment.
Exactly. If the craft or the beings emit some kind of high-energy radiation or a focused microwave field, it can cause neurological damage. We see this in pilots who get too close. It's just another form of biological hazard. It's not a germ, but it can still hurt you.
And then there's the video, the rumored VHS tape.
The holy grail of ufology.
The story goes that a high-ranking Brazilian military officer recorded the creature. Maybe during the capture, maybe at the hospital, we don't know. And he makes a copy and brings the tape home.
And his teenage daughter finds it.
Thinking it's a hidden porn tape, right?
Yeah.
Classic teenager snooping. She and her friend pop it in the VCR, expecting to see her dad's secret stash, and instead she sees a shivering, red-eyed alien being prodded by doctors on a metal table.
That video has never surfaced publicly, but the witnesses to the video exist. James Fox has spoken to people who claim to have seen it with their own eyes. It's out there. Maybe it's in a safe in Brazil. Maybe it's in a vault in Langley, Virginia. But it exists.
So where does all this leave us? We've got the timeline, the biology, the neurosurgeon, the active cover-up. Let's try to synthesize this.
If you zoom out, Varginha is completely unique. It is a hybrid case. It has the craft retrieval aspect of Roswell, the hardware. It has the mass sighting in an urban area aspect of the Phoenix Lights, multiple witnesses, broad daylight. But it adds this third terrifying element, lethal, biological. Contact.
It's the contagion element of the UFO story.
It is, and that changes the entire conversation. First contact is usually framed as a diplomatic event, take me to your leader, or a mathematical event, here's some prime numbers. Varginha suggests first contact is a medical event.
A biosecurity crisis.
Exactly. If their biology is incompatible with ours, or worse, actively hostile to ours, we can't just shake hands. A handshake could kill you.
And that explains the hazmat suits we hear about in other cases. That explains the extreme secrecy. It's not just we don't want to panic the public about aliens. It's we don't want to panic the public about a space plague for which we have no cure.
And think about Marco Cheriz. He is effectively the first known human casualty of biological warfare with a non-human intelligence, even if it was accidental.
That's a very heavy designation.
It is. And the fact that his death was covered up, his medical records were seized, his family was gaslit, it's a profound tragedy. He died protecting his town from an unknown biological threat. And he's been treated like a footnote in a conspiracy theory.
And Dr. Venturelli's testimony adds that psychological dimension on top of it all.
The higher intelligence.
Yeah.
If they are smarter than us, and they are telepathic, and they are biologically toxic to us, that is a very, very dangerous combination.
It leads to the final provocative thought I've been wrestling with. Dr. Venturelli called it higher intelligence, yet it crashed. It was captured. It was seen cowering by a wall.
It's a paradox, isn't it? If they are so incredibly advanced, why did they crash? Why did they get caught by a couple of military policemen with a net?
Was it a crash? Or was it a delivery system.
That's the scary thought. That's the Trojan horse theory.
Explain that.
Well, if you wanted to test the biological defenses of a planet, you don't send an invasion fleet. That's inefficient. You send a probe. You send a biological sample. You crash a ship. You let the locals retrieve it. Let them handle the bodies. You let them get infected. And you watch to see what happens.
You test the waters.
You test the immune system of the planet. Marco Cherise died. His immune system failed completely. Maybe that was the data point they were looking for.
That's a terrifying thought.
It is, but it's a possibility we have to consider. If a single scratch killed a healthy, fit soldier, what happens if we really open the box? What happens if we decide to invite them in?
We might not be biologically prepared for that answer.
We barely survived COVID, and that was terrestrial. Imagine a pathogen that evolved on a different star system, in a completely different biosphere.
Yeah.
We would be defenseless.
Well, on that cheerful note,
Yeah.
seriously though, this is why we do this. This is why we have to look at the hard data. We have to listen to the witnesses like Dr. Venturelli, who are risking everything to tell us the truth.
And we have to support the people who are still on the ground pressing for disclosure. James Fox, the witnesses in Brazil, they're fighting a 30-year-old machine of silence, and it's still running.
If you want to dive deeper, and you absolutely should, go look up the Moment of Contact documentary. Watch the new press conference footage from January 20th. Try to read the pathology reports if you can find them.
Yeah.
The truth is there, but it's hidden in the medical files, not just in the sky.
Always follow the data, even when it's microscopic.
Thanks for listening to The Deep Dive. Keep your eyes on the skies, but maybe wash your hands.
Definitely wash your hands.
We'll see you next time.